Hello, I'm Dr. Hassan Tohid. I'm here once again with an outstanding topic. What is a literature review? Remember, this video is for absolute beginners who have no idea what a literature review is. So let's talk about this. You must have heard this word a lot: literature review, literature review, literature review. And it creates a lot of confusion. People are really scared of this word literature review. So I'm here to finish that confusion for you and make things easier. So let's talk about this. What is a literature review? Remember, there are different kinds of research or different kinds of study designs. If you look at the study design pyramid, we have different kinds of studies. On the top of the pyramid is the systematic reviews and meta-analysis. Then there is clinical trials. Then comes the observational studies, and then the ideas, opinions, editorials. And then at the bottom, we have animal studies and in vitro studies. You must have gone through it before. The study design pyramid shows that any study at the top is the highest quality of evidence. And usually systematic reviews and meta-analysis are on the top. Now, they are review articles. So in order to understand what a literature review is, we need to understand what are review articles. Is a terminology, is a study design, and there are different kinds of review articles. As you saw on the study design pyramid, the systematic reviews and meta-analyses are on the top. And there are different kinds of review articles, and we'll talk about all of those possible types that I can discuss today in this short video. And that will help you understand the concept of review articles and what is a literature review. So different kinds of review articles are literature review, the traditional review, or narrative review. Yes, they are one and the same thing. Remember, don't get confused with the terminologies and the names. The literature review is also known as traditional review, and we also call it as a narrative review. So these are one and the same thing. Second kind is scoping review. You must have seen my video on scoping review. If not, then you can search on my channel and you can go back and find the video, scoping review. The third kind is mapping reviews, and I have another video on that as well. Then the fourth kind is systematic reviews. And the last kind, the most famous one, meta-analysis, or most difficult one, according to many. So these are the major kinds of review articles. I know there is an umbrella review and other kinds of reviews too, but just stick to the most common ones: literature review, or traditional review, or narrative review, scoping review, mapping review, systematic review, and meta-analysis. These are different kinds of review articles. And systematic reviews and meta-analysis are unanimously agreed upon number one on the top of the pyramid. They are considered as the strongest evidence. Now, where does the literature review go? Literature review, by most scientists, is not considered as the strongest evidence, although it is a very strong evidence, and I love it. But majority of the scientists, they will put it with ideas, opinions, editorial. They will not put it as one of the strongest study designs, because there is a chance of bias in that study. And we'll talk about that. So now, literature review, traditional review, or a narrative review is a study design, is an article, just like any review article. So what is actually a review article? That the review article is a thing where you combine so many previous papers and you write one article out of it. I'll repeat again. You combine previously published studies and sometimes unpublished studies. This is very important. Not only just published studies, sometimes unpublished studies as well. You combine them together and you write one paper out of it by combining previous papers. Maybe you can find something new. Maybe you can find something unique that other people may have ignored. That's why we write a review article. Now, traditional review, scoping review, mapping review, and systematic review, and then meta-analysis. These are the major kinds, right? So how do we differentiate a traditional review from other kinds of review articles? Remember, in a traditional review or literature review or narrative review, we don't follow any checklist. We don't follow any guidelines to write a literature review. In systematic reviews, scoping reviews, we use PRISMA checklist. For meta-analysis as well, we use PRISMA checklist, preferred reporting items for systematic reviews and meta-analysis. Preferred reporting items for systematic reviews and meta-analysis. But for traditional review, we don't need it. We don't use it. Traditional review can be written without any checklist, without any guidelines. The only acceptable guidelines nowadays people use is SANRA checklist. So if you are writing a traditional review or a literature review, then you use SANRA checklist. And then you write the article. Now, in systematic reviews, remember, a systematic review is only as good as the studies it contains. That means you keep the best studies in terms of quality, the studies with lesser chances of bias to write a good systematic review. But in literature review, you don't need to do that. You can include any kind of studies. That's why there's a chance of bias in that. You can have weaker studies too. So literature reviews are written without any quality appraisal check or critical appraisal, quality assessment. No checklist is used for quality appraisal. No quality appraisal is used, and you include all kinds of studies. In systematic reviews and even scoping reviews, meta-analysis, you put the best studies. You keep the best studies. But in literature review, systematic literature review, traditional review, or narrative review, you don't include the best studies. You include all kinds of studies. So no checklist used. And if you do use a checklist, that will be SANRA checklist, SANRA. No quality appraisal, no quality checklist used. And the method and results section are optional. Yes, in literature review articles, traditional reviews and narrative reviews, the method and results section are optional. That's why you will see many traditional reviews without even a method and results section. You can just directly see introduction and you see the discussion and you see that that's the end of the paper. So that's why literature review is easier to write. But remember, it's broader. You don't usually follow a research question, a strict research question, a narrowed research question in a systematic review or scoping review. Here, you don't do that. You don't even need a research question per se. You just need a broad topic, and that serves as your main research question. So literature review in easy terms is like an essay. You write an essay on a broader topic, and you include all kinds of studies. No quality check. The only difference between an essay and a literature review mainly is that here you insert some references and where you got the information from. So that's the literature review. Now, many people would be thinking that we have heard one more terminology, literature review, while doing systematic reviews, while doing clinical trials. Yes, I do understand that, and I'm going to discuss that as well. Literature review is a terminology that can also be used for the process of collecting data for a review article. In a systematic review, for example, you collect information from previously published papers and you write a paper, right? Checking the quality and you write a paper. So you are actually reviewing the previous papers. So you're reviewing the previous literature. So we also call it as literature review. Literature review is a process as well. So don't confuse the literature review done in a systematic review with a study design literature review. That's why literature review, study design is also known as narrative review or a traditional review. And ideally, the most common word is the term traditional review. Traditional review, if you use that terminology, it will finish the confusion. Traditional review and literature review, study design, and narrative review, study design are the same thing. But the word literature review is also used for the process of collecting data from previously published papers. So can a clinical trial have literature review? Yes, in the discussion section, you will always see some literature review done by authors, and in the introduction section. In the introduction section of any article, you will see some previously published papers searched by the authors, and they wrote a paragraph or two. They actually did a literature review. So yes, in a clinical trial, you can see a literature review component. In observational studies, you can see a literature review component in the method or discussion section, in the introduction or discussion section. Same in clinical trials, and same in systematic reviews and meta-analysis. So don't ever confuse this word literature review. When somebody says that I wrote a clinical trial and I did a literature review for that, so that's not surprising. They did conduct some experiment in their lab or in the hospital or in clinical setting or in rehab setting. But while writing, they wanted to collect previously published papers, that what other people have said, in order to compare their findings with previously published findings. That process of searching the data from previously published papers is known as literature review. So the word literature review has two meanings. One is the study design, and the other is few parts of each paper that you write while combining information from previously published papers. So I hope I have made this clear, that what is a literature review. Now, who writes it? Anyone can write it. You can write it. 12 grade students have written it. So yes, you can write it. Why do you write it? To get more publications, for career advancement, of course, but mainly to learn and mainly to serve others. You are trying to give the readers some idea or knowledge that they probably did not have before. So your literature review can be very powerful as well. It can give more ideas to other people. It can increase knowledge. It can give new suggestions and new questions to think of or think about to the future scientists. So literature review is written for that broad purpose, to enhance knowledge, increase knowledge, to give ideas and suggestions for future research, new questions for future research, and of course, to increase your knowledge and the reader's knowledge, and also for career advancement. When it is written, you can start right now. Where do you do it? You can do it on your desk, on your dining table, in your living room, in your classroom or a cafe or anywhere. You can do that anywhere. You just need a computer and internet, and you can start working on your literature review. Now remember, I'll repeat again with a quick summary what a literature review is. Literature review is a study design, and literature review is also a process of collecting data from previously published papers. Now, if it's a study design, it is also known as narrative review or traditional review. You don't need a checklist per se to write a traditional review or a literature review. But if you do have to use a checklist, then use SANRA checklist, SANRA. Method and result sections are optional. Quality appraisal is not done. You don't need it. And you can write just like an essay, and you bring references and you complete your paper. Now, secondly, if it's a literature review of systematic review or clinical trial, if you see this terminology, literature review, when somebody is doing a clinical trial, that means they are saying that we collected some papers from previously published papers and included in our experimental study that we conducted. And this part was collected from previously published papers. So that is what they mean by the term literature review. So literature reviews are study design, and it's a process. So in a clinical trial, in systematic reviews, in meta-analysis, or in any kind of study design, there will always be some previously published papers. And we call this process as literature review because they reviewed some papers, some literature, and they included that or those papers in this paper. So yes, so remember, study design, literature review is a study design, and literature review is also a process. I hope this makes things easier for you and your concept about the idea of literature review is cleared. If you have any question, comment below. I'll come back and answer your questions and concerns. Thank you for watching this video. Keep learning, keep watching.